As we saw in the previous video, the images over here, they are storing the full URL in the document. In Rails, the action text gem comes integrated with active storage, which is another gem that generates thumbnails, variants, and whatnot. We don't actually have a first-party replacement for active storage in Laravel. The closest thing that we have is Spotsy's MediaLibrary. So I thought it would be cool to show you how to integrate this and make a more advanced version of your attachments. So let's do that. And we are going to the basic installation over here and copy this command, and then we'll publish the migration. Now we can migrate. And I'm also going to publish the configuration, but we are not going to change anything over here. And that's it for installing the package, but the media library depends on an existing model. And if we are in our application, if we are creating a SHRP and we upload an attachment, we don't actually have anything to hold our media models to. So what we are going to do is we are going to introduce our own model, attachment model, and create model migration over here. So let's go to the model itself, and let's go to the migration actually. We need to create a polymorphic relationship, a nullable record polymorphic relationship. This is the model that our attachment is going to be attached to. In our case, it's a SHRP model, or it could be anything. And we are also going to extract the caption. So the caption will be stored in our rich text document, but we are going to extract that and store it in the attachment so we can easily interact with it. And I'm going to make that nullable because the caption is nullable. And we also need to extract the attribute over here, and I'm going to make that nullable as well. Let's go to our attachment model, and to integrate the model with media library, we have to implement the has media contract, and it needs to use the interacts with media, and that's it to integrate it. But we could generate our conversions over here. So if you need to generate a thumbnail or anything like that, you can do that like this. And that should be it for registering our conversion. So I'm just going to add our relationship over here for the record. This will be a morph2 relation, and we are going to return a morph2 over here. And that should be it to integrate it with media library. But we also need to make this model a custom attachment. So let's also implement the attachable contract over here, and we need to make it use the attachable trade. And our LSP over here is telling us that we need to implement the rich text render method. So I'm gonna paste a bunch of methods over here. One of them is the rich text render. The other ones we don't necessarily need to implement, but I'm doing that over here to show you how you can override some of the methods in the attachable contract. We are going to talk a bit more about attachments when we are building a mentions feature. So the rich text render needs to render these attachments to HTML so we can render it in the final version. So over here, I'm going to change the path to rich text Laravel, attachables, attachment. And this file doesn't exist yet, so let's create it over here. Rich text Laravel, attachables, attachment plate PHP. Okay, let's open that. And now I'm gonna create a figure tag, and over here I'm just gonna type temporary, and that should be enough to get us going. Now let's go to our web route. Now instead of uploading it like this, we are going to create our own attachment like this, and then we extract the media. So attachment, add media, and we pass the file that we get from the request over here, and we called it to media collection, and that should be enough. So now we have to return the URL, which we can get from the get full URL from our media class, but we also need to return something else. So we need to reference this attachment in our document, and the way we do that is using a signed global ID, so SGID over here, and we can get our signed global ID using the rich text SGID method from our model, which comes from the attachable concern over here. Over here, it has rich text SGID, which generates a signed global ID for this model. If you don't know what signed global IDs are, global IDs is another gem that I ported from Rails. It works the same way, but we are able to create a URL that identifies any specific model in our application. So whenever we need to store a reference to a model, And this is not a simple foreign key or something like that, like we need to embed the reference into a document in our case. We can use the Sun Global ID for that. This also gives us a way to locate the models using the Sun Global IDs and whatnot. Also, we can explicitly set a purpose for the global ID so they cannot be reused in different contexts. In our case, the package is setting a purpose for the rich text Laravel, so only Sun global IDs that were generated for the purpose of being embedded in a rich text Laravel will be located by the package. I already have a video on the global ID Laravel package, and you can check that out if you want to know more about it, but that's the gist of it. So we need to return a Sun global ID, which we can do like this. And in our front end, we don't actually have to do anything because we are setting over here all the attributes that come from the backend. So we are going to set the URL and we are going to set the SGID attribute, which is what Trix needs. And now that should be it. So let's see what we have. I'm gonna run composer run dev again. Actually need to migrate the attachments table. So let's run composer run dev now and see what we have in the browser. So let's create some attachments over here. And before we do that, actually, let me open the DevTools and let's create some attachments now. And it worked. Now we are returning the Sun global IDs over here, and those should be setting on the attachment. Yeah, so you can see there's a SGID over here. I believe that's all we have to do, first and second over here. If we try to save it, it's actually going to work, but instead of showing the images, we see the temporary thing that we have in our view. So that's actually pretty good. That means that we can actually implement the figure over here. And to give you an idea, this is the views that the package ships with. So we have attachable and remote image. So you can take a look at this over here if you want to know how to build these figures, but you're actually free to do whatever you want with those. So I'm gonna paste the code over here. Yeah, so this should be it. So we are getting the attachment, which we are passing, if you remember, in our rich text render method, we are passing the attachment, the media, and some options that package gives us. So over here we are rendering, like, if it's a previewable, that's why I'm actually overriding the rich text previewable over here. So if it's a previewable kind of attachment, then we show the image tag, otherwise no image tags will be shown. So we can show the caption if there is a caption, otherwise we show the file name or the human readable size. And if we save it, go back to our application and reload, now we can actually see the image. So that's pretty good. If we edit, we can actually see that the captions are not being carried over. And that's because we're not actually carrying anything over. And what I mean by that is if we run Composer Artisan Tinker over here and we get our attachment model, let's just create the first one. You can see that nothing is actually changed. That's because we're not doing anything besides creating the attachments. So now let's set those attributes. We need to add our own handling of attachments over here to our Sherp model, but let's do that in an abstract way. So I'm going to create a trait in our models concerns has rich text attachments. So let's jump to that trait that we just created. And over here, I'm going to create the boot has rich text attachments method so we can register some callbacks to our model. We are going to hook into the saved method and we are going to receive the model over here, which we can type hint if we want to. Whenever our model is saved, we are going to sync attachments, and this method doesn't exist, so let's add it, sync attachments, and we can actually make it protected. And let's also add the attachments relationship, which is a morph many polymorphic relationship through the record relationship. Now we can go to our Sherp model, and over here we can say use has rich text attachments. In the sync method, we basically need to loop through our rich text attributes. We need to convert this key or value to an attribute, which we can do by checking if the key is a string, then the key is the attribute name. Otherwise, the value will be the attribute name. And this will give us just content, but that depends on what we are setting over here. As I said, your models can have multiple rich text attributes, so we need to do it this way. And to start, we need to convert our existing attachments. So let's get all of those where the attribute is equal to this attribute, and we are going to update the record ID to null, and record type will also be null. Oh, this needs to be a You saw that. Okay, what's happening here, we are getting all the attachments that were previously attached to this model and we are detaching them. And now we need to scan our content, which can be anything, our content model, and we need to extract the attachments from that. And we need to look, actually, before we do that, we need to filter. So we are going to receive the attachment, but this is not our attachment model. This is the rich text attachment class. And we can check if the attachable is an instance of our attachment model. So the attachable in the rich text Laravel is our attachment model over here. So if that's the case, we are going to look through all of those. We are going to get the attachable and update that attachable, setting the record equals to this. The caption will be equal to, we can get the node. This is the DOM node of the attachment in our document. So we can grab the attribute, the caption attribute, if there is one. And we also set the attribute over here, just so we can have a reference of which attribute this attachment is attached to. This over here doesn't actually work yet. To make it work, we just have to do a set record attribute, and we receive a record, which we are going to do record associate with this record. And now we also have to make it unguarded over here. So now we set the record, the caption, and the attribute over here. And that should be it. So if I start composer run dev again and go back here, reload, we still see that the caption wasn't carried over. But if we edit, now the captions carried over. If we check our Tinker session, if we get the latest shirt, we can get the attachments of that. And that gives us a collection of our attachment models. And as you can see, the caption is over here. So yeah, that's how you can integrate it. And just one more thing, if we start deleting, we also have to clean up our attachments. So what we can do over here is we can go through all our attachments and delete them all. And if now I run composer run dev again, reload and delete this file, now the actual images are gone because the MediaLibrary should handle that. So yeah, that's how you can integrate MediaLibrary with the rich text Laravel package. Now you should have a much more advanced control over your attachments. One thing to note is that the MediaLibrary actually uploads everything to a public disk. And if you don't want that, you have to implement your own disk. So we can go to our file systems. We could extract our own media file system over here, go to our MediaLibrary config and change the disk over here to media. And this would upload them to a private folder. So we wouldn't actually be able to reference the URL. So that means that we would have to create our own route over here, attachments like this. And then you can grab the request and the attachment from the URL. And over here, you can check if user has access to this attachment somehow. Maybe you check the record or you store the account of the user uploading the attachment over here in the attachment itself, and you check that or something like that. And then, so you can see that if it's actually previewable, then you can return get first media and then to inline response passing the request. So you can do that, otherwise get first media. Now, instead of returning the URL of the media itself, we no longer need to do this. We can just return a attachments show and then the attachment itself. So we need to pass the request to this one over here, and we need to name this route to attachments show. And now we can safely store our attachments in a private URL. Let's upload this one and save. And then, yeah, as you can see that something didn't work. So this is still using the URL. So did I save it correctly? Route attachments, URL, that should be it. In our view over here, we also have to do the route attachments show and then pass the attachment itself. And I believe that should be it. So let's see. Yeah, so now we have a private attachment route which means the user no longer can access URL. And I'm gonna open Firefox over here, and we are gonna try to access this, and it shouldn't work because our attachment route is actually private. So this way we know that our attachments, they are private to our applications if you have to implement something like that. So yeah, that's it. That's how you can integrate the rich text Laravel package with Spotsy's media library and get some more advanced attachments handling. In the next video, I'll show you how we can enhance our typing experience over here in Tricks, and we can add some Markdown inspired formatting to our Tricks editor over here. So yeah, I hope you like this one, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!